Hi again then guys, and welcome to a video which you probably didn't expect to get today, at least if you are already around on the channel, because the laptop issues are still ongoing. It's going to take a few days to get that resolved, but we've got a minor fix for the moment, which means that at least in the meantime I will be able to still put out stuff like Gran Turismo Sport content. It's just the other stuff that's going to suffer. Plus the unfortunate side effect of losing every single photo mode entry from the past 6 months. So that's going to be fun getting all those back again. But for now, of course, we have more silhouettes to guess as far as their April update goes. And that brings us to the confirmed 50 cars that they promised to give us by this time. Of course, we have more potentially coming later, because Kaz has said before that the game is going to be much, much bigger. We just don't know after this when the next pack will be. And to avoid disappointment, I would recommend not expecting it every month, because there's been no promise of that from this point onward. So, let's get into it. Now we have 13 cars, which I believe we had last time as well. In the first pack I got 9 out of 10, technically 9.5. I said GT40 instead of GT, so it's close enough. And interestingly, I'm going to be validated in this pack, which is nice. And in the second pack I got, I think it was 7 out of 12 or 7 out of 13, whatever it was. And I'm happy about that, to be honest. I'm glad that there were cars that I didn't know. That's the whole point of adding new cars. Don't just add the same faces over and over again. We want new ones. So I'm glad about that. Plus I was just glad that I got the Pantera right, because that instantly stood out to me, and it's a cool new addition. In this pack we have some more cool new additions, and some which, to be honest, I was not expecting to come back to the game. Now the first one on the list, working from top to bottom, left to right, is an important one. The most voted car on GTPlanet to make a return. Now, I must admit, although I love the car, I don't love it that much. I'd much rather see an Espace F1 come back, but I can understand why a lot of people love it. It is probably my favourite BMW, the original E30 M3. Gorgeous classic, an icon of the touring car world. If only we had the 190e from Mercedes to keep it company, and the Sierra RS500 from Ford. But it fits in so well with the kind of cars that Gran Turismo has. Even the rally ones, like the Quattro, the Delta, they have a similar kind of style, those homologated rally cars and touring cars from that era. Doubtless it's going to make a really good N200 or N300 car. I'm really looking forward to seeing the E30 in its full glory. Next up we have what appears to be a car which of course we discussed last week in Beards and Cars about the classes that need to return to the game. And one of them was kind of confirmed before by, I believe it was one of the drivers, the LC500 Lexus Super GT car. Now it appears to me at least that there might be 2 Lexus models in this pack. I believe one of them might be this one, the LC500, and the other one might be an RCF, at least that's what it looks like to me, but we'll get to that in a second. This one, though, appears to be the Super GT Lexus, so that's going to probably please a lot of people, but I would recommend not getting your hopes too high, because, of course, what has happened so far when we get cars on their own, they get dumped into Group X, so don't hold your breath. I hope that it's not, but I'm not hoping too much. The next one is a very interesting looking car. And although I have high hopes for what it could be, because of course it has a very prototype-esque shape, I'm a massive fan of prototype race cars, it also has kind of a Formula E look to it, but I think the cabin looks a little bit too far forward to be a Formula E car. Unfortunately, I think this is a RedBull Junior. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I hope it's something completely out of left field, like a new LMP 1, 2 or 3 car, probably not LMP3, but something like that. It could even be something like a Caparo or a Holm, but again, I don't think so. The shape doesn't look quite right. But the fact that it has the very LMP style shape with, you can kind of see at the front end, that very high pronounced nose cone, which again is very Formula E-esque. I do have a strong inkling, based on also how small the car looks, that this could well be a RedBull Junior. I hope that it isn't. I really do, because it's such a pointless car, which is useless for anything but one-make racing, but we'll see. The next one is an interesting one because it's clearly an R35, but the front end reminds me of the older R35, like the 2007 shape, because as I've said before, I don't use the colour correction, or not colour correction, the high contrast adjusting the brightness, all that kind of stuff that people like to do with these silhouettes. I just look at it and say what I think. So it's clearly an R35. The front end reminds me of an older one, but one of the clues I think for this one may just make it a car which I did predict to return to the game. It's a fairly obvious one to bring back if you are going to bring another R35, because of the fact that the rear wing is not very pronounced. Because, of course, the GTR has a wing that stretches the entirety of the width of the back end. This one, as you can see, doesn't appear to have that. It looks like a very minimal wing, which would make it a Nismo. I believe that this is the GTR Nismo for sure. The only other option that has that kind of small wing is the Academy Edition. And I don't know, I don't think they'd bring the Academy Edition back. Not that it's a bad car, it's actually the fastest top speed of any GT class machine in Gran Turismo 6, but still, I don't think they'd bring that one back. The next one stumped me for a while, but a couple of people were saying that they thought this was an FC RX-7. That would be a good addition. Personally, I'm hoping we get the FB, is it? Yeah, the FB. Had a brain fart then for a second. We haven't had that car since Gran Turismo 2. It's one of my favourite JDM cars, but the FC, of course, is a long-standing favourite. Initially, this car was kind of reminding me of an R31 from the front end and an Aston Martin Virage from the back, but on closer inspection, if you look at the window line, yeah, it does look like an RX-7, most likely an FC. Hopefully, a stock one. I don't really want these BP Falcons and drift cars and all that kind of stuff, just give us the stock one. The next one, I've heard a couple of people say they think it's a Vanquish. It is very clearly an Aston Martin, but no, it's definitely not a Vanquish, it's a DB11, because the back end slopes downward, whereas the Vanquish slopes up with the integrated wing. The front end, the grille, is way bigger than the Vanquish, which of course is Aston Martin's new design style, and you have the much bigger headlights. Looking forward to that one. That one's going to be pretty good, I think. The next one, I believe, could well be the new Supra, the Gazoo Racing Supra concept. It's got a similar kind of swooping shape, especially on the side, that car has. Could be wrong, but I think it's probably that one. The next one, again, is very clearly a Mustang, but I'm going to actually reuse my guess from last time. I was wrong. It was a Mach 1, which was a car that surprised me, actually, by how much I enjoyed it. This time, I'm going to guess once again that this is a Trans Cammer. To be fair, I hope I'm wrong, because I don't really care about the Trans Cammer. It's just an obvious shape to go for. It could be a Boss 429 instead, which would be a much nicer addition if you're going to go for a Mustang. But I don't know, I wouldn't have thought they'd had a Boss and a Mach 1 so close together. I'm surprised that they added two Mustangs that close together, to be honest. But I'm going to go with the Grand Touring Garage Trans Cammer. But we'll see. The next one, of course, I predicted way back, when it ended up being a GT instead, which still isn't a bad thing, the GT40. Now, it's going to be interesting to see which version of the GT40 it is. I think the red version, the road car, is much more likely, although I would love to see the 69 Golf liveried version come in, because that one from the back end looks incredible. The much more pronounced exhaust pipe sticking out with those fat, chunky hips. Looks great from the back. The road car, it's a little bit slimmer, a bit narrower, doesn't look quite as good. The next one I'm going to say is probably the Audi Vision GT car. And again, I could be wrong, but of all of the cars here, it certainly looks the most like the Audi silhouette, very angular, lots of intakes, and it looks like contrasting colours, perhaps carbon, like the R8 has on the side, but we'll see. The next one, of course, is one of the most recognisable shapes of the entire franchise, especially since GT5, the RedBull. Now, the question is, which RedBull? Is it a 2010? Is it a 2011? Is it a 2014 standard or fan car? Or is it an X2018 or an X2017? Unlikely. I think probably it's the 2014 fan car, because that's the pinnacle so far. I prefer the 2011 because it's the most powerful and has the highest top speed, but the 2014 is better through corners with a lot less power. I wouldn't have thought they'd add the standard. They might, but I wouldn't have thought so. I think that it is highly likely it's the 2014 fan car, which once again would feed into the idea of adding the Junior as well, because of course they also did that on GT6, along with the standard as well. The next one I believe is the Lexus RCF. I might be wrong, I'm not hugely into Lexus models and shapes, so I won't be bothered too much if I am wrong, but it does appear to be a thicker body, so not as slammed in Super GT style. Could be somewhat like a Time Attack or a drift car. I believe someone mentioned a while back that somebody had confirmed a Lexus drift car, but I may be wrong about that, I'm not sure. And the final one I initially thought was an R33, but on closer inspection it actually looks like an R32 Skyline. That's a strange choice, because we already have the R32. Now, if this is an R32, which one's it going to be? Well, the one that comes to mind, given that looking at the shape it's very simple, it doesn't appear to have a massive body kit or an insanely large wing, I think it might be a Mainz R32, which would mean that was the first time since Gran Turismo 2 that we've had that car in the game. Maybe it's something completely different. It could be a time attack, again it could be a drift car, but I don't know, I think it might be a Mainz R32. It certainly does appear to be an R32 of some kind. I guess it could be a GTST, maybe, but again, I wouldn't have thought so. But it is interesting to see how they're adding more Skylines and more Mustangs so closely to each other. That's interesting. Personally, I would have rather had something like a Chevelle instead of a Mustang, and maybe an R30, well, definitely an R33 instead of another R32, but we'll have to see. So very interesting overall. Some of them I'm dead certain about, the DB11, the E30, the RedBull. Some of them are more open to interpretation, like which version of the Mustang or which version of the GT40 or which R35, but it looks like a very interesting pack. And regardless of how they turn out, it's nice to have some fresh faces, especially ones which we can definitely confirm. So overall, of course, you can slap down all of your predictions in the comments and we'll see which ones end up being right. And if you want to check out other content for GT Sport, including breakdowns, reviews, tunes for all of these cars, then stick around on the channel. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.